politics, if any.
Welcome to the Patriot Podcast with my sometimes co-host Kiki.
Thank you for having me, Robert.
You're welcome.
It's pretty late at night here. It's like 11 o'clock at night. So I hope you all don't mind. I just got out of the shower and I am getting ready on camera. Robert said it was okay.
Yeah, it's like 9:55 here. I mean, what we were talking about, yeah. You had some remarks you wanted to make with what I was talking to you about backstage about what's going on with the USAID and because USAID has over 10,000 federal employees, and they're not just here in the United States. They are distributed around the world in places like
I'm listening. I'm listening.
In places like Africa and Europe and some of the third world countries that rely on food from the USAID as well as medicine. Well, Trump has almost completely dismantled the USAID. He has cut the staff from 10,000 to 294. And that's 10 over in Africa, 10 over in Europe, and then 10 over in Southeast Asia. And see, it's not just Trump doing it. It's Elon Musk and his Doge team. And his Doge team, you're gonna have an oh my god face. His Doge team is made of 6 people who's not even 25 yet.
I just heard that the other day, and I'm looking up the USAID. Hold on. Because I want to know if that is that just, what is this? Okay. Agency for International Development. So It is, so it's an independent agency. Let me read this to the audience. And the first thing is just to respond to your Doge. So I found 2 things out about Doge because I literally am so behind on politics because all I follow is Idaho 4. Wait, do we have anyone watching?
No, not really, but we can keep going. Someone will trickle in.
Okay, hold on. Let me just tell Discord. We are live. ... The conversation is hot. ! Okay. So this is what I found out about Doge. So I found out 2 things. What you just said is a group of very young people. And then the second thing is that it's what's unique about it is it's like this open book type group. So apparently everything they do, every move they make is supposedly supposed to be tweeted, right? Or put on transparency. Yeah, it's supposed to be complete transparency. So so regardless of what they're doing, at least we can see it. And I time will tell if they're going to continue that, but I think that's interesting. And then the USAID, let me read this to you. Do you want me to I can share the page if you want, or read it, whatever you'd like.
I mean, you can read it.
Okay, it says the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, is an independent agency of the United States government. It is primarily responsible for administering civilian foreign aid and developmental assistance. USAID was established in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy to unite several existing foreign assistance organizations and programs under the agency. Statute law places the foreign assistance organizations and programs under one agency. Statute law places USAID under the direct authority and policy guide of the Secretary of State. It implements programs in global health, disaster relief, socioeconomic development, environmental protection, democratic governance, and education, with an average annual reimbursement of 23 billion since 2001. USAID is one of the largest official aid agencies in the world and accounts for more than half of the U.S. foreign assistance and the highest in the world in absolute dollar terms. USAID has a mission in over 100 countries, primarily Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Middle East and Eastern Europe. In 2025, and this is the controversy. Now, again, this is back to, before I read this, I'm going to just give my grievances about Wikipedia. I've told this to your audience before. I'm a Wikipedia lover / hater. Like, I've been a fan for many years. I've given so much to this company in terms of like donations. I've probably given more to them than I have like the American Cancer Society. I have, there's no question about it. It's probably one of the charities I've donated the most to, but I stopped donating to them because they're freaking not fair anymore and they are not completely open. And so anyway, I'm going to read whatever they have to say about Trump, but I guarantee nobody's able to edit it. So that I wanted to give that disclaimer. In 2025, the second Trump administration announced sweeping changes to USAID. President Donald Trump ordered a near total freeze in all foreign aid. Elon Musk, who has been carrying out Trump's cost-cutting agenda, announced the intention of shutting down USAID. New York Times has reported that nearly all USAID employees have been laid off. A lawsuit was then filed by the American Foreign Service Association and the American Federation of Governmental Employees in the United States District Court of the District of Columbia, requesting a preliminary injunction against the administration and that all recent actions related to its attempted disbandment be reversed. Due to the unconstitutional and illegal action, U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols issued a temporary restraining order on February 7th, pausing the plan to put USAID employees on leave and accelerational removal of people from their posts abroad. These employees are still locked out and able to return to their jobs February 9th. So there's a couple things so there's three things I'll bring up and then I'll turn it over to you. So the reporting source is the New York Times. So that's one thing, is that's the source of their reporting. I would hope that they would go with like the Associated Press or something, but nonetheless, that segment is brought to you by the New York Times. So that's the first thing, take it with a grain of salt. That's a paper with a complete slant, So the second thing I will say is when it comes to the District Court of Columbia challenging this executive order, I want, like, a lot of people get, they hear that and like, oh my God, a lawsuit well, that's how you stop executive orders. If you remember correctly, when Biden issued over 100, whatever they're called, presidential orders, the only way we stopped executive orders, it was through the courts that we ceased them or adjusted them and whatnot. So that's the process. That means our government is working. And there was one other point. Oh, and the other thing I noticed when I was reading the description, which was interesting about USAID, is the vast variety of things. It's like everything. And I do not necessarily believe I don't believe in completely halting foreign aid, but I will say that one of the dangers that happens when we do massive cuts, you have to be careful because you have to be strategic about it. We know that there are places where China came in after we did this at other times in the Belt and Road Initiative. And I mean, we would not be fighting over the fucking Panama Canal right now if people paid attention. You know what I mean? Like, hello, like China didn't just, they came and China bought us out. Like, I don't know all the working details of that, but that's our fault. Like, we could have been there for Panama and we weren't, and China showed up. And it's the same thing in Brazil. Like major things, like as far as my understanding, bridges and power plants and stuff like that. So it's scary when about taking about all foreign aid, because guess what? Big sugar daddy doesn't mind okay, this is my opinion. I'm going to say something really triggering. Big
Yeah.
sugar daddy doesn't mind starving the kids to come pay somebody to bribe them. And that's just a
Yeah.
fact. And if you don't know what happens in that Belt and Road Initiative, it's pretty scary. Like, you know, they'll come in and they'll sign these, like they'll come in and they'll build a railroad in like Africa or something. And like it's crazy. Like they'll hire the companies, but you're not allowed to hire anyone but Chinese people. And it's like, anyway, I should shut up because I don't know enough about it to speak about it. But I do know that that's tied to foreign aid. And that was one of the tragedies about pulling out in some of the foreign aid that we had. And
Yeah. See, well, just like, you know, you have the war in Ukraine going on right now. And on day one, Trump signed an executive order that cut all funding off to Ukraine. And Pete Hegseth made the comment today because he's the new Secretary of Defense. He sent a message to Volodymyr Zelensky that they need to accept the ceasefire, and the terms of the ceasefire is Russia gets to keep whatever land that they conquered in the war. And Pete Hegseth made the comment. He said, "I suggest that Ukraine accepts the terms because the Ukraine fund is officially cut off."
I mean, I am so not knowing what to think. Like, I mean, I don't know what to think about what's going on in Ukraine. We never should be here in the first place. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be the one to say that we should end the war in Ukraine or we should walk away. But on the other hand, what are like, you tell me, audience, you tell me, because I don't know the answer. You tell me, Robert, what is a best case scenario?
Well, Hegseth is trying to get Ukraine into NATO. And
I thought he said that there's no way. I thought I heard him literally say today that there's no path for Ukraine to join NATO.
that was like right after he made that statement. He doubled back on it. Says, well, I need to talk to NATO, see if there's a path. But yeah, you have there's a new congresswoman in Congress. She's the very first transgender to ever get voted into Congress in Delaware. Yeah, so she's a Delaware congresswoman.
Okay.
You have the entire Republican caucus there in the House. They've targeted her. They've made it to where she's not allowed to use the women's restroom on the House side. If she needs to go to the restroom, she has to go to the Senate side, or she needs to use the bathroom of her gender at birth. And personally, I don't agree with that. I have my oldest daughter. She's a member of the LGBT community. She came out in 2017, and I see the struggles that she goes through, and I see the struggles that this new congresswoman is going through. She had some of her constituents ask her point blank why she didn't fight the Republicans. She said, "I'm here to work for my constituents. I'm not here to fight with a bunch of idiots." And she's from Wilmington, Delaware. She is the very first transgender to ever be elected into the House of Representatives in ever, and as well as the House majority is the smallest it has ever been in the 100 years. The Republicans only have a 3-seat majority, and the reason why that is because when the orange-haired Mussolini got inaugurated, he picked 3 Republicans from Congress. So you have 3 empty seats in Congress on the Republican side. So there's 2 special elections going on in April, and then there's another special election going on in November of this year. The Democrats are trying to flip those seats to where they could actually tie up Congress. So it would be 217. And what's his name? Hakeem Jeffries made the statement: if we can get these seats flipped, then Trump's agenda will come to a screeching halt. But he's getting a majority of his agenda out via executive orders. And there's a lot of people that don't understand. During the campaign season, he stated that he didn't know nothing about Project 2025. He thought it was too extreme. He didn't like it. But as soon as he was inaugurated, all those 400 executive orders he did in 2 days were Project 2025. He started rolling it out through executive orders, and it states in Project 2025, some of like they want to dismantle NOAA, the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Association, which gives the data to the weather services about hurricanes and tornadoes and snow and rain. They want to dismantle that. They've already started dismantling the USAID. That was in there. They want to dismantle the Federal Department of Education. And my daughter, she's special ed, and that would affect her special education because Trump wants to go to a merit-based block grant program.
A merit-based block grant program,
Yeah.
meaning the schools that perform, you get the grants.
Yes, meaning that the schools that bend over and kiss his ring get the grants.
Well, wait, what's it say? It's a merit-based, say it again, merit-based block. Say the term.
Merit-based block grant program. He wants to send the Department of Education back to the states, and we've all seen what happened with Roe v. Wade when the Supreme Court overturned that. They sent it back to the states, and look at all the chaos and the pandemonium that happened with that. So you have half the states that are for abortion, and you have half the states that are against abortion. Just imagine that happening to the schools if he gets rid of the Federal Department of Education. That would seriously put, the way they put it, that would seriously put a lot of the lower income children at risk of not getting the education that they need. He wants to do the merit-based block grant program, which is kind of fucking stupid. And I read something last night. He wants to pass this bill called the SAVE Act, which basically the SAVE Act, if you're married, if a woman is married and her last name doesn't match up with her birth certificate, the woman is not allowed to vote.
Wait, say it again. If she's married and
Okay. If her married name doesn't match up to the name on her birth certificate, that woman would not be allowed to vote. So he's trying to
wait, Robert, explain that to me, because I'm a married woman and my name is not the same on my birth certificate. How could I be married with my name the same on the birth? You know what I mean? Your name changes.
Yeah, you can't. Basically, what he's trying to do is silence 69. Yes, he's trying to silence and disenfranchise 69 million women.
What are you talking, Robert? Stop for a second. You need to pull this up because there's no way that he's making married women not vote in the U.S. Like
It's
that's
in
not
Project 2025, and
Robert.
I'm not
You
going to read
need
a
to
900
pull
page
that up.
document.
No, Robert. That's like doesn't make any sense. Like I'm sorry, but that doesn't make any sense. Married women can no longer vote. That doesn't make any sense. You've got to show that to me. There's no way I can just take that at like, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Okay,
How
I'm pulling
could
it
a
up.
voter's name match their birth certificate when half of America's name changes when they get, you know what I mean? When they get married. It doesn't, you know what I mean? It means that married people can't vote any longer, or they would have to keep their husband's name, I guess. There's got to be something more to that, is what I'm saying. Not, I doubt you. Just like we're missing part of that, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Passed the House on July of last year. It's currently just sitting in the Senate. This bill requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship in order to register to vote in federal elections. Specifically, the bill prohibits states from accepting and processing any application to register to vote in a federal election unless the applicant presents documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. Further, the bill prohibits states from registering an individual to vote in federal elections unless at the time the individual applies to register to vote, the individual provides documentary proof of U.S. citizenship and requires states to establish an alternative process under which the applicant may submit other evidence to demonstrate U.S. citizenship. Let's see. Each state must take affirmative steps on an ongoing basis to ensure the U.S. citizens are registered to vote, which shall include establishing a program to identify individuals, and it says who are not U.S. citizens, but non-citizens aren't allowed to vote anyway because of our Constitution. Additionally, this bill requires states to remove non-citizens from their official list, eligible voters. The bill allows for a private right of action against an election official who registers an applicant to vote in a federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The Election Assistance Commission must, within 10 days, adopt and transmit guidance for implementing the bill's requirements to the chief of state election officials. Let's see.
There are 3 summaries for H.R. 8281. Bill summaries are authored by CRS. Shown here, passed House, July 10, 2024. Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act or the SAVE Act. This bill requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship in order to register to vote in federal elections. Specifically, the bill prohibits states from accepting and processing an application to register to vote in a federal election unless the applicant presents documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. Further, the bill, 1, prohibits states from registering an individual to vote in a federal election unless, at the time the individual applies to register to vote, the individual provides documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. And 2, requires states to establish an alternative process under which an applicant may submit other evidence to demonstrate U.S. citizenship. Each state must take affirmative steps on an ongoing basis to ensure that only U.S. citizens are registered to vote, which shall include establishing a program to identify individuals who are not U.S. citizens using information supplied by specified sources. Additionally, the bill requires states to remove non-citizens from their official lists of eligible voters. The bill allows for a private right of action against an election official who registers an applicant to vote in a federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The bill establishes criminal penalties for certain offenses, including registering an applicant to vote in a federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The Election Assistance Commission must, within 10 days, adopt and transmit guidance for implementing the bill's requirements to chief state election officials.
I know. I just pulled it up over here too. The SAVE Act could stop millions of women from voting Here's what you need to know. The Republicans have a new voter registration bill, the SAVE Act, which experts warn could be a major threat to voting rights for all Americans, and particularly married women, people of color, young voters, and other marginalized groups. The bill, sponsored by Texas Republican Chip Roy, was first introduced in 2024, where it passed in the House of Representatives. Now it has been reintroduced to the new 119th Congress. The SAVE Act is clearly written to further intimidate undocumented immigrants from voting, which is already illegal. Amidst the debunked right-wing hysteria that non-citizens are voting in American elections. However, the data show that the SAVE Act would only disenfranchise eligible American voters and do nothing to prevent illegal voting. The legislation would require all potential voters to provide in person proof of citizenship, such as a passport or birth certificate, when they register or re-register to vote. So, for instance, if you're already registered to vote but moved to another state, you would probably need to present one of these documents in addition to a photo ID at a government office when you re-register. Wendy Weiser, Vice President for Democracy at Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law, tells Glamour the legislation is being promoted as an election integrity bill, but it's actually voter suppression. If it passes, it would be the first federal law in our history restricting access to voting. Weiser notes that there are already multiple safeguards to prevent non-citizens from voting, i.e. the Constitution. And all this legislation would do is make it more difficult for everyone to vote. It would destroy the most popular methods of registering to vote, whether that's online, by mail, through a registration drive, or when you update your driver's license at the DMV. By requiring people to show their documents in person to register, that would keep out many eligible voters and cause chaos for election administration. And it talks. Okay.
Oh, sorry. No. Keep going. I'm sorry. I thought you were. I thought you were done reading.
Okay. Abortion after Roe, the fetal personhood bill just introduced in Congress, explained that there's been a lot of concern online about a series of anti-abortion bills introduced in the first few weeks of the Trump administration. Here's the facts. In fact, the bill would impact millions of eligible voters, including an estimated 21.3 million Americans who do not have ready access to a birth certificate or passport, as well as anyone who relies on voting by mail. Early research indicates that it would disproportionately impact voters of color and young voters, and it says how does it impact women? But it would also have a direct impact on anyone else whose legal last name doesn't match the name on their birth certificate or passport, such as 79% of heterosexual married women, per the Pew Research, who takes their spouse's last name. If a married woman hasn't paid $130 to update her passport, assuming she has one, which only about half of Americans do, she would not be able to vote in the next election if the SAVE Act becomes law, Weiser says. And there's a chance this may not even be an accident. As recently as 2020, the 19th RNC speaker and anti-abortion activist Abby Johnson said she supported household voting, in which the head of the household, typically a man, casts one vote for the entire family. This was a common argument against the women's suffrage movement before the 19th Amendment was passed. And it should be noted that Project 2025 explicitly condones and seeks to enforce this sort of family structure. Should the SAVE Act pass, household voting could become the de facto law for married women who changed their last names. While out trans people represent a much smaller percentage of the country than heterosexual, married women, about 1.6% of adults, according to Pew, they too could face a particularly insurmountable hurdle to voting if this bill becomes law. Already, the State Department has blocked trans people from changing their gender markers on their passports, according to NBC News, and from getting new passports that do not reflect their gender assigned at birth. If a trans person legally changes their name to reflect their gender, but is denied a passport with that name, they would not be eligible to register to vote under the SAVE Act. Roy told Axios the bill explicitly directs states to establish a process for individuals to register to vote if there are discrepancies in their proof of citizenship documents due to something like a name change, but voting rights experts aren't convinced. That the Brennan Center found that when similar documentation requirements are introduced in Arizona and Kansas, where I live, tens of thousands of citizens were barred from registering to vote. We do not need to apply for asylum in Canada just yet.
It's fucking, the article is like very, very it's a very passionate article.
Yeah. But we should all be concerned. Luckily, for the time being, at least we still live in a democracy where where there are things we can do to stop this bill. If we speak up, we can make sure the SAVE Act never becomes law, says Weiser. If you are concerned about the SAVE Act and how it would undermine Americans' voting rights, contact your elected officials in Congress and ask them to reject this dangerous bill. Invite your friends and family to do the same, Weiser tells Glamour. And we do not have to stop there. We can demand law reforms that actually expand voting rights. We can make sure we are registered to vote and make a plan to vote in the next election. And we can encourage others in our community to do the same. That would be like, if that bill actually passed, like, oh my God. Cheryl says, this is ridiculous. I don't know how he's getting away with the most of what he's doing. Well, I will say this, Cheryl. He is trying to enact what's called unitary power, where all the power is unitarily put under the president. Because if you look at the inauguration, like when Biden was elected and he was inaugurated, we didn't have a week-long inauguration celebration, did we? Yeah, we had the typical him standing up in front of the podium with the Bible in his hand, raising his right hand, and it was done. The inauguration committee this time around fashioned the inauguration after the British crown coronation. Yeah, how the Brits do it when they Charles was coronated king after Elizabeth passed away. They partied for a week. So the inauguration committee here designed the inauguration on the 20th as a British coronation ceremony. So basically, we didn't get a president in the election. We got a king, or at least in Trump's eyes, he's a king.
I want to respond.
Go ahead.
All right. So the first thing is that is an interesting article, and these are certainly things that I'm going to look into, particularly when it comes to voting ID, because I definitely lean one way in this argument, but what you just brought up is a really interesting point. if this bill is not thought through enough, that if there's an instance where a woman becomes married and then doesn't have the backup ID, there has to be some sort of loophole, like a form you fill out saying, I changed my name. I get why they're doing this, because like I just moved to Massachusetts. This is the only example I have. I voted in New Hampshire my whole life. Even when I lived in other states, my family, my father would grab me an absentee ballot and have me vote for New Hampshire. I would always vote in that one state. I can't recall ever voting in another state than New Hampshire. But when I moved to Massachusetts, anyway, the point is that I registered my car and my husband and I are freaking out. We're like, we need to register to vote. We need to register to vote. Come to find out, they just registered us. We were just registered. And so then I go down to vote, and I mean, they asked me my address where I was, but they didn't ask me for my ID. And my point is this, is that in Massachusetts, it's well known that they kind of let everyone vote. I'm going to be honest with you. So it doesn't matter if you're not documented or legal. If you can get a driver's license, you can vote in the presidential election. And if you have a large, like where we live in Cape Cod, there's a swing population, if that were true, which means there's a huge influx of foreign workers. We rely on H-1 visas, and there's a couple different types of visas, and they're the most amazing people. We need them for our economy. But I mean, if you think about it, if you have an influx the size of a third or a half of your town come in, and they're a foreign nation and they're allowed to vote, think how they could swing your vote if you don't have a way to stop people who just register and get a driver's license from voting. In Brewster and Cape Cod, 14,000 questionable votes, not in this election, but the last presidential election. And there's no and there's no way to go back and trace them if you don't have these chain of custodies, which you're supposed to have. You're supposed to go on a checklist when you vote. So I think that there's definitely an imbalance of people taking seriously votes. There really is supposed to be a chain of custody. Even when you get them from a drop box, you should be able to go back to every single absentee ballot, and you should be able to match signatures, match residency. And that doesn't appear like it's always being done. And I think that that's not, Robert, you and I had a wonderful conversation in your last podcast where you were a little bit nervous to talk about voting irregularities. And I said, no, Robert, speak your mind. I think this is important. You need to talk about it, because I feel the same way about voting irregularities. And I think you have the right, you definitely should be concerned about it. And if we're concerned about it, being able to trace our votes is one way to prevent voting irregularities. And then the other thing is the coronation. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. My wife was asking me something.
Oh, I just didn't know if you wanted to tell me something. That's all. And then the last thing I'll say about the coronation thing. If it's true that the Trump administration mimicked a coronation like the King of England, yes, that's insulting to do. That's not probably a great idea. I mean, aesthetically, if they were mimicking it, but for appearances, that's not great. So if that's true, I definitely do find that I can see where that'd be insulting, especially the people that didn't vote for Trump, which is a lot of Americans. But on the other hand, as far as like the large celebrations, I thought that it was interesting that there weren't a lot of like flashy celebrities. There weren't a ton of them.
And no, there was at the inaugural ball, which wasn't televised, because you had Carrie Underwood performing at the inaugural ball. You had for Shiz on My Nizzle, Snoop Dogg performing at the inaugural ball.
Mm-hmm.
You had, I think, Kid Rock performing. I'm not sure, but one of my favorite rappers, Tom McDonald. He's a political rapper. He was there. He was an invited guest at the inaugural ball. So him and his girlfriend showed up, and they were like rubbing elbows with Snoop Dogg and Trump and everybody. But
well, I mean, the point I was going to make is, yes, Biden had a very stoic and traditional inauguration. I 100%.
Bland.
Yeah, but I will give you that. Like, it was very Americana, bland. But if you remember back to Obama's inauguration, which we're both old enough to remember,
Yeah.
that
I was locked up in prison when he was inaugurated.
I'm just saying it was a totally star-filled, star-studded party event. So I mean,
Yeah.
I also don't want to selectively, maybe it's a general criticism that we need to look into. I do want to say I appreciated the inauguration when there was a focus on like singing American songs,
Yeah.
having traditional music, showing the flag, showing patriotism, putting all politics aside for inauguration. That's important. Like
Yeah.
the peaceful transition of power, even though we think it's like nothing, it's so big. The peaceful transition of power is literally one of the things that separates us from a country that's falling apart to a country that's functioning.
But we
'Cause
didn't have that. We didn't have that in 2021. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I had it, and I only feel safe saying it now. I was scared of voting irregularities, just like you were scared of voting irregularities in this election. I was scared of voting irregularities in 2020. And I mean, it's probably an old conversation, but I mean, specifically, I was taken back by the voting irregularities I saw in Philadelphia with my own
Yeah.
eyes on video. So I mean, yeah, like, you know, we both have the same concerns and we're on different sides of the
Yeah.
political spectrum. So it means that something has
I'm independent. I used to be a Republican. I voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020. But I'm an independent now. So yeah, I'm not drinking the orange haired Mussolini's Kool-Aid anymore. Now see where I do regret voting in 2024 was I voted for RFK Jr. And I didn't realize if you vote for RFK Jr., that's basically a vote for Trump. Because if you look at it, he was trying to back out of the election in the battleground states. RFK was, well, he kind of lost. Yeah, he lost the fight to get taken off the ballot, and basically everyone that voted for RFK Jr. was basically voting that was a vote for Trump, and which I think in the end kind of hurt Kamala. Yeah, and I honestly do believe it hurt Kamala. Well, what really didn't help any matters was she only had 90 days to get a campaign off the ground, and I think she did a really good job of getting that campaign off the ground in 90 days. But if she would have had longer, like if Biden would have stepped out earlier than he did, because he was fighting tooth and nail, saying that, oh, I can beat Trump. But when they actually showed him the data that he would lose horribly to Trump, then he backed out. And I think that that hurt Kamala, because the way Nancy Pelosi was putting it, that they didn't want Kamala. They wanted an open primary at the Democratic National Convention, and the coup that got Biden out, which was basically Obama, George Clooney, Chuck Schumer,
Yep.
Nancy Pelosi, they all connived behind the scenes to get him out. And I think the only reason why he endorsed Kamala was a final fuck you to the people that got him out.
Oh,
That forced him out. Yeah, and I think that's the reason why he endorsed Kamala, was because they forced him out, and that was his final fuck you to them.
look, here's the deal: is like Kamala. I don't know if she could have won, no matter how much time we gave her. But to agree with you, she was placed in incredibly unfair circumstances.
Yeah.
Do I think she did better than Biden would have done? I don't know. I think they probably would have done about the same. It was a crazy situation. I mean, I don't I will say is if they had placed in somebody who could have at least carried the press,
Yeah.
like for instance, Gavin Newsom, I don't
I
know
think
if it would have been the same outcome, because here's the thing: is she can't carry the press. The more
no.
she can't even. You guys, I'm so sorry if you're a Kamala supporter. And again, I probably wouldn't on a podcast say this during the election, but afterwards, my observation is this: just her speaking voice alone, not putting the effort into
She kept
just
changing her accent.
your vocal tone. You know, you have to remember, like, people take you I mean, these are just basics that you learn when you go on camera, when you learn psychology. Like, there are certain tones you take when you want people to listen to you, and it's not all hocus pocus. And it's like she just didn't understand any of these concepts. What I'm saying, and Hillary Clinton,
her cackling.
I mean, for all the people said about Hillary Clinton at least understood how to put some bass in your voice when you're answering a question, give some, project yourself slightly. And she was polished. So what I'm getting at is, let's just say it wasn't Kamala Harris. Let's just say Gavin Newsom was put in there.
Or Gretchen Whitmer.
Would we have had the same outcome? And then to top it all off, her vice presidential choice, I mean, I bet he's a lovely man. I am not knocking him, but on paper, the things that you look at were so unappealing to a large sect of America. Like, I do feel if you were a Democrat, I shouldn't say Democrat. I do feel if you were part of the core part of the Democratic Party, some of the things that went on really would energize you. But if you're just a moderate Democrat, independent, there are things in his past that might turn you off. And then this whole point about Robert F. Kennedy, you know what, this is a crazy debate to have, because I don't really consider myself a Republican. I don't really consider myself anything. I guess I'm an independent, but I do love libertarian philosophy. And what I've always thought about, like, the Libertarian Party is, like, people always say, oh, when you put a Libertarian on the ballot, it takes away from the Republican, right? They always have that argument. But to me, it's like, or if you vote for a Libertarian, you're taking away from the Republican Party. But for me, it's like, how will we ever have a free election if you can't just vote for who you want? So it's a big debate. And many people have had this debate throughout the years. They've had this debate when Ross Perot came in, and Ross Perot himself could have probably won that election. This is like, I mean, I don't even know if I was old enough to vote when Ross Perot ran, but I remember vividly him dropping out and coming back in and losing his momentum. And I look back now and I would think if somebody was that on top of the world, they probably did it because they wanted to not take away from the Republican vote. So it's a great question. Did Robert F. Kennedy maybe throw this election for the Democrats? He probably played a role, let's face it. But would we want it any other way? Would we not want someone to independently come in and shake up the elections?
I mean, I've had this discussion with Carl, and Carl said that Gavin Newsom's not ready yet. He might be ready in 2028. Now, if she would have picked, say Josh Shapiro there in Pennsylvania, he would have been a very strong vice presidential pick. He's Jew. Yeah, he is Jewish, so that might have played a part in her not picking him, because if you remember, we had the pro-Palestinian protests going on at the time she was running for president, and across the college campuses, in the United States. But where she messed up was picking Tim Walz. He was the governor of Minnesota. He still is. He was wanting to put tampons in elementary school boys' bathrooms. She basically, in 2020, she didn't get one vote. She dropped out before the Iowa caucuses.
Right.
She was running 2% back in 2019 and 2020, and she had dropped out before the Iowa caucuses. And a lot of people say the only reason why Biden picked her was because of her skin color. She would be the first. She was half Indian and half African American. Even though her dad is Jamaican, but a lot of people say her dad is white, and he's Jamaican. A lot of people say that she was only picked because of her ethnicity, and the vice president's role. I don't know if you know this, Kiki, is actually ceremonial. The vice presidents they really don't do nothing except for maybe being the tie-breaking vote in the Senate or counting the electoral college ballots. Their role is strictly ceremonial. But with all these different executive orders coming out by Trump, which is basically rolling out Project 2025. Some of his EOs have been blocked by the courts. One of his EOs was actually unfroze today by a different federal court judge, and it was the one for the spending freeze. The judge said that he has some control of the spending freeze, but he needs to allocate the funds that was already allocated by Congress.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? The executive office has to spend the money they're given. That's why they're doing the buyouts. They can't not spend it. It's
the reason why he's purging the federal workers is because they're unpartisan.
By the way, if anyone's watching, I'm in my pajamas. I don't know what time of day the replay is going to come, but it is almost midnight where I am. So, and I just got out of the shower. So I'm just filling in because we have 3 people watching.
I hope to get more eventually.
This podcast is amazing because there's a need for it. There's a need to have 2 voices when we talk about politics. There's always people talking about the left side, always people talking about the right side. We need people who are willing to talk together and not scream at each other. I'm just saying, chat, do you agree with me? Drop a 1 in the chat if you agree.
Well, there's only you and Cheryl. And I don't know if Cheryl's still chatting, but
drop a 1 in the chat, Cheryl. Cheryl's probably taking care of her goats right now.
But there's this thing that is called unitary executive power. It basically it consolidates all the power underneath the president. And there, Russell Vought, who was the chief architect of Project 2025, he is now the director of the Office of Management and Budget. And he has made numerous statements that we are now living in a post-Constitution America.
That's so dramatic, though. Come on. The reason why we have these challenges is because the Constitution is working. When we see the judicial branch, when we see the District of Columbia coming in and stepping in against these presidential executive orders, that's the way it's supposed to work. Because I guarantee you, when the next Democrat president comes in, they're going to sign hundreds of executive orders, and the only recourse Republicans are going to have is through the judicial branch. So this is our system working. It's overcome from the other side, though, and you're watching.
Steve Bannon said what Trump is doing right now is basically called muzzle velocity. It's shooting stuff out and because Trump doesn't think that the media is all that smart, he thinks if he shoots a bunch of stuff out, then the media is just going to grab a hold of one. And if they can grab a hold of one, then the rest of the stuff will get by the media. Bannon stated it's called muzzle velocity. Basically,
That's
is
interesting. That's probably true. I mean, I would agree. I would tend to agree with Steve Bannon on that.
Yesterday Trump signed an executive order giving more power to Doge.
What kind of power?
Well, right now there is an indefinite block on Doge. And Doge is basically Elon Musk and like 5 or 6 little barely 25 hackers is what I call them.
Hacker.
Yeah, the Secretary of the Treasury, his name is Scott Bessent. He's a millionaire, and he's already stated in his confirmation that he has $1 million in back taxes that he's not ever going to pay. And Scott Bessent gave administrative what?
Well, it's okay. First off, how would he have any say in whether he's going to pay his taxes or not? You know what I mean? How do you have any say in what taxes you're going to pay? I don't care who you are. We just saw the vice freaking president's son get indicted over tax evasion.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
But he pardoned him.
No, right.
Biden pardoned his son.
I agree, but if he hadn't pardoned him, he was going to be tried on tax evasion,
and
it
gun
was
charges.
way less than $1 million. And
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is, how can somebody literally stand up there and say it? He has nothing to do with the IRS. He has nothing to do with the judicial branch. He can't say whether he's going to get prosecuted or not.
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's something I don't know, Robert, that you're not showing.
Well, no, the Treasury Secretary handed administrative control of the Treasury payment systems over to this little band of hackers.
Wait, say the payment control of the what?
Okay, the payment control system at the
Mhm.
U.S. Treasury, the one that has all of our information in it, has all of our Social Security numbers, has the payments for like SSI for veterans benefits.
Mhm.
The main payment system at the Treasury that's designed to send out payments, like for Social Security and veterans benefits, has
Mhm.
our Social Security numbers, has all of our fucking information. And the Secretary of the Treasury handed the administrative control over to one of those little barely 25 hackers, and Elon Musk started going through our personal information through the payment system at the Treasury. That's why the federal judge indefinitely blocked Doge from accessing the payment system, because can you imagine how much money he could make selling our fucking personal data to Russia, to China, to any of the oligarchs in the other countries?
I mean, okay. So the first thing is if they've created a government agency and it's got working mechanisms for transparency, that's
not transparent. It's not transparent.
What? Well, elaborate. Why is it transparent?
Doge is being sued because it's a federal agency, but it doesn't have a transparency committee set up. Doge is basically they're calling Doge, the Democrats are calling Doge a shadow government. Basically, Doge is going in, accessing information in the Treasury, in the Department of Education. They're trying to dismantle the Federal Department of Education. Doge dismantled USAID. Doge is going after. Doge has the location of our fucking nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but Robert, here's the thing that I want to point out to you. Do you realize though what you're describing? There's like thousands of government agencies that have access to all these things. Like think of all the IRS agents that are not employed or voted into office that have access to all of these things you're
Doge
talking.
is going after the IRS. They want to dismantle the IRS.
Regardless, that's not my point. My point is that I think that there may be some over expectations as to how much our information is protected, because it's not. Because think about it, all the people who work in Obamacare, all the people who work for those government, they all have access to our personal information too. They have access to our social securities, and there's nobody overseeing them either. And if this is a government agency that they're creating, well, we have to oversee this agency. It'll always have oversight. So this is, again, the checks and balances. This is our system working where people stand up and say, no, you have to have this to have this be a legitimate.
Trump is getting rid of the checks and balances. He fired 17 inspector generals.
That's regulation, though. That's the thing, is like, this is where
no, that's not regulation. He had to get permission from the Congress. He had to give Congress 30-day notice that he was firing these federal workers and these inspector generals. He didn't give Congress no notice. He just went in there and said, "You're fired." He is basically Congress is Congress, which is run by the Republicans, which is the MAGA Republicans, the Make America Great Again Republicans. The Republicans are saying, "Oh, go ahead, do what you want. We'll bow down, kiss your ring. We'll bow down, do whatever you want." The Republicans are drafting a bill right now for the permanent tax cuts for the rich. They want to gut Medicaid and Medicare, or at least cut it by $1.2 trillion, so Trump can give his rich friends permanent tax breaks and permanent tax cuts. I don't know if you watched the inauguration. Did you see who was sitting right behind Trump at the inauguration?
Mm-mm. Who?
Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, the owner of Google. All the tech billionaires were sitting about 2 rows behind Trump when he was up speaking at the inauguration. And of course, it pissed Trump off that while he was speaking, Biden got up and went in and pardoned everybody, pardoned himself, pardoned his brother, pardoned his sister-in-law, he pardoned everybody in the Biden family, and that pissed Trump off.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand why, because they were bringing up the shell corporations that went way beyond Hunter. So I can understand why certainly people, I don't know if, Trump probably pissed him off, but people in the DOJ. I wanted to push back on one thing, though, when it comes to tech oligarchs and presidential, because you know what? We didn't just see them sitting behind someone. We actually saw the government agencies from 2020 to 2024 go, well, not to 2020, to 2022, like it was beyond that. It was 2016 to 2022, or no, until it happened until 20, regardless. We saw for at least 4 years between 2016 and 2020, FBI and 3-letter agencies interjecting themselves into Mark Zuckerberg.
During the pandemic. Yeah, during the pandemic from 2018 to I think 2021. They were
that's beyond someone sitting behind you. That's literally taking over and suppressing information. So it's you. I always when I hear an argument, I wonder to myself, like, optically, why are they willing to do that? Why are they willing to have tech people sit behind them? And it sounds like the message is you wanted to play with these tech industries, we're going to try and do something in their eyes, my eyes
Yeah.
too, probably. We're going to try and straighten them out, make these into not have the government either because it's either this or it's either these are independent agencies or they need to be regulated like media companies.
Yeah.
And you can't have your cake and eat it too. But we did see one administration not even give a choice. They actually, according to Mark Zuckerberg, he was forced to suppress information, and he was forced to limit conversation. So that's far beyond somebody trying to work with someone and trying to write legislation. That's literally a government. That's fascism. That's literally the definition of fascism. So it's hard. It's hard for me to care that the leader of X is sitting behind Trump when I literally know that in the darkness of the night, anybody who spoke up against the previous administration was suppressed, and some of them even had their businesses suppressed because even before that, we talk about the IRS. When Obama was in the White House, he actually set the IRS against people who apply for their nonprofit status, who were religious organizations. And think about all the information the IRS has. Like, that's your social security. They know so much about you, and if you even dare say anything that was political, that's an IRS. That's super scary. Those are people who can take your life, and they would come down on you. So something has to be done. And that's why I do have some promise when I hear about Doge, because dear God, we can't stand up to 87,000 new IRS agents coming in and and auditing every waitress. You know what I'm saying? It's not right. And I just so I'm always under the guise of people keeping their own money. The one thing that you did bring up, which I need to know more about, and I think every American stops and wants to hear more, is when you bring up Medicare and Medicaid. There isn't I think that the super majority of Americans stop and want to know more when you say that, because these are huge programs. Even if you're not for Medicare or Medicaid, everybody pays attention because Medicare and Medicaid are part of the social services that take up the vast majority of our taxes. So we have to know what you're doing, aside from the fact that I think America doesn't want to see, certainly not Medicare, but we don't want to see people like, first off, the children are off limits. Every state, throughout this country,
my daughter's on Medicaid.
Every child should be insured. Every child in this country has the opportunity to be insured. And that should never change, because right now we have a fragile system. But when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid, I mean, we have to have some hard conversations, but I think all of us want to know, and we don't want to see health coverage taken away from citizens of this country. But it's a free for all, right now with the.
My daughter's on Medicaid.
Yeah, and no child in this country should be taken off it. But when we get down to the illegal or undocumented status, Medicaid is also offered to everybody in this country who needs health care. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just limited to the people who are paying into the system. It's also being given to everybody. And that boils down to, how can we afford 13 plus new million people on a Medicaid system that is already broken to begin with? So it's like almost this bigger conversation in web. But honestly, Robert, I think that's where the Trump administration is going to find their pushback, because when you start talking about taking away Medicaid and Medicare, everybody listens up. On the subject of Medicare, what would you think if the government decided they had to add an extra year or something for people to apply for Medicare? Do you think that would be a solution to help balance the budget?
Well, I mean, what would be a bigger solution to help balance the budget is is getting rid of these stupid Trump tax cuts. I mean, the tax cuts aren't going to the lower class or the middle class. It's going to the top 1%, like the big corporations, like the techies, like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. Now, I read something earlier. Do you realize Elon Musk has about 7 government contracts and that he's still making money off of? He's running Doge, yes, but he also has seven of our government's contracts as far as SpaceX and other stuff like that. Um, he's still bringing in $20 billion from these government contracts. Personally, I think that it's a conflict of interest.
Well,
If
if
he-
he's certainly he can't have any say in what there he can't have any say in what contracts he's being allotted. That would be a conflict of interest. But we also can't ask people who do government business to not be part of the government, or we wouldn't have any good talent. Because honestly, where's the money, guys?
Yeah.
Where's the money? It's in government. It's
Yeah,
in government. I mean, no matter what you do in
I
business,
love our talks.
it's just how would Elon Musk ever become the richest man in the world if he wasn't doing government contracts? And then the back to the taxes, Robert. I mean, the one thing that you have to admit is Trump is the one saying no taxes on tips. And then aside from that, that's a huge thing, because that means that you don't have to claim that the food service industry, it'll help our food service industry, and we need our restaurants. It's what makes our smaller cities. It stops these food islands in the inner. It's just a good thing in general. But you have to also take it like this. 60% of Americans, 60 plus, don't even pay taxes. They get all their taxes back at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, aside from property taxes, but I'm just saying, just income tax wise, people get their federal taxes back at the end of the year. The people who are paying in are about 10% of the Americans. So, and I certainly, I
Now,
shouldn't
I'll-
leave myself out of this, but I'm saying people who register as an LLC, such as how I put food on my table, we're the ones who pay the taxes. I'm be honest,
Yeah.
we don't get our money back at the end of the year. We pay in.
Now,
we
do you, now,
in on the year.
do you know Trump
Law.
was the very first American president to attend the Super Bowl this past Sunday?
Yeah.
Guess how much that cost the taxpayers?
How much?
$10 million.
What? Oh
And
my
he-
God.
And he didn't even stick around for the entire game, because as soon as they showed the Taylor Swift on the Tron, and of course she was being booed by the Philadelphia crowd, the Eagles fans, because she used to be an Eagles fan. Well, now now she's dating Travis Kelce of the Chiefs. So they weren't booing her because they hate her. They were booing her because she was part of the other team.
Hmm.
And the Eagles fans wanted the Eagles to win. Well, apparently Trump was going for the Chiefs, and by the time halftime got there, he saw exactly how bad the Chiefs were losing. He also saw that Taylor Swift was there because it showed her picture on the showed her thing on the Tron. He got up and left. Instantly took to Truth Social and was bashing Taylor Swift. Said, did you hear how bad Taylor Swift was booed? MAGA don't forget. MAGA doesn't forget. And wasn't the reason why she was being booed. But at the same time, there was audible boos for him as well. Yeah, I mean, you could hear it. Yeah, you could hear some of the boos. I mean, he was getting cheered too, but you could also hear some of the boos. He was in a private luxury box, which was charged to the taxpayers of $10 million, and the only person he was there with was his daughter, Ivanka. Melania wasn't there. Barron wasn't there. Don Jr. wasn't there. Eric wasn't there. It was just him and Ivanka. And I've noticed Melania doesn't go very many places with him, unless it's like a business thing. Like if they go over to like another country, if they like she went with him to California, but uh, he apparently when he was president the first time, he put a red button in on the Resolute desk, and it was to summon somebody to bring him a Diet Coke.
I think my freaking husband has one of those. It's
Yeah,
hey
yeah.
baby.
So every time he wanted a Diet Coke, he would push this little red button. I think it was either on the desk or on the phone, and someone would bring him a Diet Coke. But when Biden got in office, Biden took the button out because Biden likes to try to eat healthy, and
He could have pressed the button and got like a water.
now and I found something. I did a little research on this. I watched a video on it. On Inauguration Day, there's a thing called the Inauguration Remodeling Team. They go in there, during the inauguration. They have 6 hours to completely change out the decorations in the White House, in the Oval Office. And they send like a little questionnaire out to the president-elect and his transition team. Like a couple of weeks, about a month before the inauguration, and whatever the new president puts down on the little questionnaire is what they put in the White House and in the Oval Office. A lot of the stuff in the White House is very rare antiques.
Right.
So because a lot of the stuff has been in there since like day one the White House was built for, I think it was George Washington. Um, the ones that aren't the artifacts that aren't being used are kept at the National Archives in Delaware, the warehouse in Delaware,
Okay.
and it could because that they said that those artifacts or those antiques are irreplaceable.
Absolutely.
And
Especially
they,
with the paintings and stuff.
yeah, with the paintings, the vases, the little busts and stuff,
Right.
and furniture,
Mhm. The silverware,
the
everything.
silverware, yeah,
Drapes.
um,
Yeah. The silks and linens. I can imagine it. I bet there's china. I bet
yeah,
I mean I could just go on, but it's a house, Can you imagine
yeah.
like
It's
throughout decades
yeah,
and
it's a
styles?
20 yeah,
Christmas ornaments,
yeah.
guys.
It's the White House has 26 bedrooms. Yeah, well, it's 3 levels. The White House is 3 levels. The first level is like where all the business takes place. The Oval Office and some other stuff, and that's where they do the tours at. Is the first floor. The next 2 floors, there's 16 bedrooms on the second floor and 10 bedrooms on the third floor, along with what did it say? 27 bathrooms.
So
And
there's 26 rooms and 27 bathrooms.
yeah, well, the 27 bathroom is like a half bathroom,
Right. It's probably for the public.
but and there's all those collectibles in the entire White House. They said if you put an estimate on all of them, the ones in the White House, the ones in the archive storage, they are all collectively worth together about $27 trillion.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's why they're so protective of them. That's why when they move the stuff out, they're very careful. You know, when they move them, they put them back in the back of a U-Haul boxes, not cardboard boxes, like wooden crates that
Yeah.
have a special type of um, have a special type of packing in it to keep them safe until they get to the warehouse. But they only have 6 hours to get the White House done for the next first family. And the only president to ever walk in while they were still getting stuff done was Trump in his first term. Because he wanted special paint. Because every time you get a new president, the Oval Office gets repainted. The entire White House gets repainted. Now here's the funny part: the only thing Trump will eat, burger and fries. That's
Um,
that's all he wants to eat. Because you have you have the chefs. They're in the kitchen. They're in the White House. So with each president, they get a list of what the president likes to eat, and it's their main job to make sure that that whatever the president wants is what the president gets. Now
right.
with Biden, he was more health conscious. He'd eat like grilled chicken and rice
I
and
can see
more,
that.
yeah, more healthy stuff like that. All Trump wants is cheeseburgers, double cheeseburgers, and fries.
All right, well, let me weigh in on a couple of these things here. So the first one is we were talking about the Super Bowl
Yeah,
and Trump, that it cost $10 million to the taxpayers for him to go to the Super Bowl. I can't agree with you more, Robert. There's no reason why 10 million tax dollars should be spent on that. Now, I understand that there is some sort of expenses that the presidents spend to mingle with the people, but the way
yeah,
that I feel is that's a sporting event. It's on par with, no pun intended, with going golfing, and it should be done at those leisures should probably be done at your own expense. But $10 million is super excessive expense to ask the small businesses of this country to bear on their shoulders, for
especially
that.
not staying for
I
the whole
agree.
game. Especially not staying for the whole game. Just
Well,
stay
I
for
mean,
half the game
it's
and left.
almost semantics. Just in general, a $10 million expense is outrageous. Although I do question when I see congressmen and people constantly using those jets in
Yeah,
Air Force One and stuff. It costs a lot of money to do that. Anyway, that's just beside the point. And then the other thing about Melania not being there, yeah, Melania, she's really grown into this role at First Lady, and I have noticed she has turned herself into a consummate statesman.
yeah,
And what I mean by that is she is not giving reactions. I mean, just when you saw Jimmy Carter's funeral, I mean,
hmm
that woman stood so stoic. She kept it real. She's not going to pretend that she doesn't
yeah.
think that one of these people sitting in front of her tried to assassinate her husband. Sorry, trigger warning, everyone. But she keeps it real. And I can see her totally not wanting to anything to do with the pomp and circumstance, because this is some serious stuff. Her
Yeah,
husband almost got shot twice. Think
yeah,
about that. You were Melania Trump. This
yeah,
is life or death. Your child is in the spotlight now and highly involved in this. Your only son, all of your stepchildren highly involved in this. Can you imagine? Like, I have noticed with her, she's not playing games anymore. And I can see why she didn't show up at the Super Bowl, aside from the fact that she's not American and she doesn't get all giddy about it like we do.
yeah.
Like she
And
doesn't get
see,
endorphins from it.
he was the very first president to ever attend the Super Bowl live.
Yeah, but I don't have a problem with that. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't.
No, I'm just saying. Um, you have like Biden and Obama and all of them that watch the Super Bowl at home or at the White House or wherever they watched it. He was the first to ever to show up to the game live. But yeah, it was kind of cathartic that he didn't stay for the whole game. As soon as he saw Taylor Swift on the Tron, and as soon as he saw the Chiefs were losing, he bounced. And then he took to Truth Social and attacked Taylor Swift on Truth Social. And do you know what he's trying to do now? He's trying to get pennies abolished in America.
Well, okay, hold on. Let me get back to some of my points here before we get to the penny thing, because I've heard of that too. I'm gonna have to dive that deep into that. But I mean, about to the inauguration committee and the people who change everything out before the next president comes in, and they only have that 6-hour window. And you were mentioning Trump was the first president to actually enter while they were doing that process. And part of that process is they need to put up new paint, new carpets. Usually new paint and new carpets with any tenant you need. It's like a law. So I can see where they have to do that too. I don't know about the new carpets in the White House, but certainly new paint. What I want to remind you guys, and I think this might have had something to do with the reason Trump came in early. I vividly remember hearing about these little stupid little smacks in the face that every administration does when the next administration comes in. And I heard it got particularly bad after the Clintons. And I heard that they did a lot of shitty things to the incoming Bushes. Like, I'll give you an idea. They left and that 6-hour committee came in, and you know what they did? They took all the W's. I mean, you think it's funny, but it's fucked up. They took all the W's off all the keyboards. So he couldn't type his name. Yeah, you laugh now, but if you were on the other side of that, you'd be like, you know, can't we just have a normal transition of power? But it went beyond that. They just obnoxiously pranked it. They took all the silverware. They took all the fucking silverware. Do you know how trashy you have to be to take the silverware from a place?
Well, he did get a blowjob from an intern in the Oval Office.
Okay, so here's the deal: is how can you even blink an eye at Trump wanting to come in and have an eye on what kind of shitty things the administration is doing to him before he comes in? Of course you would. I would. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit there while somebody messes with me. I'm going to go and I'm going to say, okay, see, do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the Clinton thing. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be a stiff. Like, I think it's funny, but they did steal all the silverware, allegedly.
Wow.
And I mean, you have to that has to take your breath away, because I mean, if it's like a trope, it's like a stereotype, the trash that takes the silverware, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and again, I'm not saying that about an American president, please. It's coming out wrong. It's late at night right now. I'm just trying to address the reason why, if I were president, why I might want to come have an eye, or I might want to send my wife to go have an eye at those people transitioning all of the stuff over and what they're slipping in their pockets.
Yeah.
Just
and see with Melania, because Trump all he wants to do is eat cheeseburgers and fries. Melania doesn't eat with him when he does that.
Oh no.
She'll have the kitchen staff fix her and Barron something, and
she's like a size 2. I mean, she's like a size 0. I can't remember what it is, but she's like a perfect size. I want to say she's a perfect size 0 or something.
Yeah.
And it's been like noted everywhere. So I cannot imagine that I don't see how she wouldn't eat with her husband. That's kind of weird, but there's no way that she eats cheeseburgers and fries.
No. Now there is one thing I found out about Barron. You know, Barron's 6 foot. He's 6'9".
What? Really?
Yes. He's like 18, 19, and he's 6'9". No, correct. He's 6'8", and he's like 18 or 19. If Kamala would have went on Rogan, because she was actually invited onto some of the alternate media podcasts, like Joe Rogan, and some other ones, she would have got more reach.
Oh, 100%.
And she would, I'm not saying she would have won the election, but she would have got a lot more votes than what she got. Because they say that he got a landslide and there was a mandate, and he only had 2 million more. He only had 2 million more votes than her, but 13 million people didn't vote in this election either. And I mean, I was talking to Carl about it earlier. Carl can't get past why there's 13 million votes that wasn't calculated. I said, well, maybe they didn't vote because there were some people that didn't vote because they didn't like Trump, and some people didn't vote because they didn't like Kamala. But those were Biden voters. The ones that didn't vote for Kamala were Biden voters. And of course, Biden, if he would have ran, he would have got slaughtered. Even worse than Kamala did. But no, when Kamala's campaign team turned down Joe Rogan because he wasn't legacy media. He wasn't like MSNBC and all the left-wing media.
Right.
He was alternate media. They didn't want to do alternate media. So Barron, Trump's son Barron, reached out to Rogan. It was Barron and some other of his Gen Z friends that reached out to these alternate media sites and got Trump on. That's why Trump was on 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway, who's the Undertaker, the wrestler, the Undertaker. That's why he was on Joe Rogan. If Kamala would have went on Rogan, my God, could you imagine how the election would have turned out if she would have went on Rogan? Because
I think she would have got more votes for sure.
Rogan has over 3 million subscribers and viewers. So that would have been a tremendous reach if she would have went on there. But oh no, I don't do alternate media. Only do the mainstream media. And when she did go on mainstream media, she got softball questions, by people like Kristen Welker and some of the others. She tanked her 60 Minutes interview. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, she's not much of a talker.
That was nice of you, because it's like the nicest thing you could say. I'm going to be perfectly honest.
Well, go ahead and be perfectly honest.
Handling the media. I mean, that's just, look, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but the rumor was when she was vice president, she refused to get prepped. That a lot of the time when her team would leave her was because she just straight up wouldn't listen. And they'd say, look, we want to prep you for this. And she just didn't have the time of day to listen to what people said. And I mean, for me, I don't even have like a large platform when it comes to media.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I do is I listen to others. I have advisors. I talk about my mods. I talk about my managing mods. You have to have advisors, and she refused to take any of that advice. And particularly when it comes to the media, I mean, for you to not practice or polish or hope that the spirit is going to carry you through it is just foolish. Everybody knows that in public speaking. And I don't know how it escapes her, particularly if she's an attorney. But I don't know if she actually is like, if she's as seasoned of an attorney as we thought. Now, the other thing about the 13, only winning by 13 million votes, but the problem is, or 13 million votes not accounted for, people staying home. Yes, he didn't win necessarily with the landslide you're talking about because a lot of voters stayed home, but you have to calculate that in because, I mean, this is kind of the last thought. I really got to get off after I leave this thought. I'm going to actually part ways. I want to leave with this thought. Elections have consequences. Yeah. And if they didn't, nothing would ever get changed. And so something has to be done. And I think that the system is working right now because we're seeing the pushback. We're seeing people fine-tuning things. But most importantly is we have to talk about it. And it's the unique thing about our country is that we have freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And you and I as citizens could talk about this. We have NBA players who came over from other countries who say, this is crazy. We're not even allowed to speak out against our government, where we come from. You guys are allowed to talk about your leaders. Even European countries where they're not allowed to talk about their leaders without being condemned or not allowed to participate in public life. So it's so important that we talk about it, because the concerns that you have, we can bring them up and we can all look at them. And with that, I just want to say thank you for having me on your podcast tonight, Robert. I love your channel, and
Thank you.
very appreciative, but I am going to be signing off for the night.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream out. I'm going to talk to you a little bit behind the scenes for a minute.
All right, chat. Thank you so much. We're so grateful for your viewership. And
oh, yes.
I know the chat wasn't that active, but we could see you there and we can feel your energy, and we just appreciate you watching. And please leave your comments in the replay crew. We want to know what you think, and we want to talk about what you think. So let us know.